Chapter 6. Life on the Outside. When I got up, there were two things I noticed. First, it was dark. Very dark. Second, it was very quiet. I felt around for my pip-boar and slapped it on my arm before turning on the light. The shack was not very large. Onion and I could fit rather comfortably, but I couldn't tell what species it was designed for. The bed I was lying on was a bit larger than me, but not overly so. There was not much else. Opposite the bed was a table and a single chair. There were some magazines scattered around, although they were all too faded to make anything out. I looked at the walls. It looked as if there had been windows on all four at one point, but they had been boarded up. Luckily, the door was still usable. Beside the table was Onion, floating a few inches off the ground, most likely in rest mode. On the wall behind the bed was a poster. It depicted a building with a large curved roof. It was decked out with lights, and below it said, "Come down for a wild time." Sounds classy. There wasn't much else in the shack. I looked down at the bed and remembered it was a bit used. I swallowed my nausea. I went through a lot worse in the Burrow. This time, however, I didn't have access to a shower to clean off. I went over to where I hung my jumpsuit to dry. I noticed there were a few holes and the suit was still damp. My fur had mostly dried up, but I really didn't want to put that thing back on again. I picked it up and turned it over to see where the 76 was emblazoned. I rubbed my paw over the numbers before I threw it on the ground. I didn't want to remember that place. Thankfully, I came prepared. I opened my backpack, which thankfully was waterproof, and pulled out the clothes that I had packed. It wasn't much, some black jeans, a button-up blue and white flannel shirt. I thankfully had some clean underwear. I had no idea how or when I was going to clean my clothes, so I figured it would be a good idea to pack some. After getting dressed, I went over and woke up Onion.
"Good morning, miss. Or should I say night? It is rather dark in here."
You noticed that too, huh? How long do you think we've been here?
By my calculations, I'd say about 5 hours. How are you feeling, miss?
Better, honestly. Between me getting knocked out by those damn darts and this rest, I'm feeling unusually refreshed.
That's good news. Now, come first thing in the morning, we should try to find some shelter. A bit more clean than this.
According to my pip-boar, it had been around 10 at night. I really didn't want to spend the next 6 to 8 hours trapped in this small shack just to wait for sunlight. I was getting really fidgety and needed to stretch my legs. Hey, Onion. I'm gonna go take a look around.
This place is rather small. I'm sure you've seen everything.
No, idiot. Outside.
Miss Springs, I do not recommend it after that debacle we barely managed to get through. What if there are more of those creatures out there in the dead of night?
He was right. We almost didn't make it out of there alive. If it wasn't for those explosives, we would have been dead. I can't just stay here, though. I won't admit it to him, but that little adventure we had was actually kind of exciting. Definitely the most excitement I've had my entire life. It makes me want to know more of what else is out there. What other dangers thrive in this unknown world? The safety of the Burrow was well behind me. It was just the two of us, and we needed to stick together. Unfortunately, neither one of us were fighters. Your arm actuators are on the fritz, right?
Yes, miss. My arms are not functioning much above 30% capacity.
Well, since I'm fresh out of parts to fix you, and I want us both in tip-top shape, I think looking around for something I can use would be advisable.
I really don't think...
You? Stay. Good boy.
Honestly, I am not your pet, Miss Springs.
I know. A pet would talk less. Well, that shut him up. I don't blame him, though. Yes, I do need parts to fix him. I used most of my spares when I almost lost him last time. I also need to see what's out there. I was hoping that while I checked out our immediate surroundings, I could come across something that would help either of us. I wasn't planning on going too far. I don't even know what direction I came from. and the last thing I needed to do was go wandering back to that hellhole and find out that some of those creatures survived the explosion. Although I don't see how they could. I grabbed my tool belt, placing the gun firmly between the belt and my body, although I didn't want to use it unless absolutely necessary. I left the comforts of the shack. Now, don't go answering the door for strangers.
No one can be stranger than you, miss. Do be safe.
The only time I'd ever seen the night sky was in some books. The sky always looked so majestic. A blanket of small lights bursting from the darkness. Hints of blues and purples from distant galaxies. My mother told me about the constellations that helped ancient travelers find their way. There was the Mother Bear and her son Little Bear. She told me the story of how very long ago, before the dawn of civilization, a great bear had lost her child while foraging. She looked high and low for him but could never find him, and in doing so got very lost and she couldn't find her way back home. The mother eventually found her son, who had fallen off a cliff. Stricken with grief, the mother bear stayed by her child's side until she too died. Mom told me that in her final breath, she begged the gods to never let another soul get lost again. They answered her by bringing her and her son's spirits to the sky and formed the two constellations. They would always be together and would always help those who were lost. I had wished to see the sky, to see those two bears trapped in the heavens for myself. Too bad my first good look at the night sky was ruined by overcast. Reality came crashing down and I shook my mind off and scanned the immediate surroundings. It was too dark to make out much, but after my eyes adjusted for a bit, I started to see shapes forming in the night. Tents. There were probably hundreds of tents scattered throughout. Most of them had collapsed, but a few were still standing. Since I had no idea who, or even what was out here, I decided to keep my light off. I didn't want to attract any undue attention. I walked up to the nearest tent and carefully dug through it. Just like the stadium, it was covered in a thick layer of dust. I found a couple empty cans, a tattered sleeping bag, but nothing useful. I also saw a small pile of bottles. I picked up one and looked at its faded label. It was called Rad Cola. It was like this for the next few I tried. I ignored the tiny ones. I highly doubt anything rodent-sized would help me. I tried my luck in a very large one. Unlike the first, I found some unopened cans of food, I think. The labels were missing, but I put them in my bag just in case. I also found some more empty bottles of that soda. Almost every tent had at least one. Must have been a popular drink. One of the tents had an unopened bottle of the soda. Seemed popular enough that I should try it, but not now. I put it in my bag and continued my search. A few of the tents had some skeletal remains of its former residents. The first time I saw one, I had to bite my tongue just so I wouldn't scream. Despite all I had seen earlier, the sight of a body, even its decomposed remains, is still unnerving to me. While most of the collapsed tents were a bust, the first intact one, a dark yellow tent that was almost double my size, held some nice surprises. The first thing I noticed was a metal sphere not much larger than onion. I closed the tent behind me and risked turning on my light. The light reflected off the metal plates and almost blinded me. After dimming my pit bore a bit, I could finally make it out. It was almost a perfect sphere, save for one side that had been flattened. On it was a screen that had a large crack going through it. Unlike Onion, who had all his antennas and sensors on top of him, this thing had them on either side, like whiskers. My pipboard couldn't seem to connect to it through the wireless or wired connection port I found just below the screen. Luckily, I was able to pry open the casing and scavenge a few parts that looked compatible with Onion. I wish I could just take it with me and spend some more time figuring out what it was, but it was too large for me to carry. The tent didn't have much else to offer, though. More empty cans, some shredded clothes that were way too big for me, and a metal box. The box was locked, but something in me really wanted to know what was inside. I didn't have any lockpicking tools, nor the experience to use them. But I did remember something I read once. I think it was called Tumblr's Weekly? I don't know why a magazine about lockpicking was in the Burrow, or who it belonged to, But it did have one article in it about needing to pick a lock without tools. Now, how did that go? I think it said to find 2 really thin objects that can fit inside the lock. I looked around and remembered the antennas on the robot. I went over to it, snapped a few of them off. They looked thin enough. While trying to recall the article, I carefully turned them. Snap! Damn. Luckily, there's a few more. I really know I shouldn't be wasting my time on this, but I do love a good mystery. Plus, it's bothering the crap out of me not knowing what's in there. After a few more attempts and a couple broken picks, I was finally rewarded with that pleasurable clicking noise as the latch popped open. Time to collect my treasure. The inside of the box was lined with a rather intact red velvet lining, and there were 2 small velvet pouches. They had a bit of weight to them, and were tied off with a small golden rope. I carefully opened and placed its contents in my paw. It was a gold coin. Large enough to cover my entire paw, but not too large to make it hard to carry. On one side depicted a rabbit. The rabbit looked an awful lot like me. But then again, maybe I just look like a typical member of my species. I turned the coin over and on the back was printed, Luck. I opened the other pouch and inside was another coin about the same size and color, only instead of a rabbit, a fox was portrayed on it. The back of this one said Cunning. I put them back in their pouches and put them in my bag. I almost felt compelled to take them. And it's not like there's anyone else around here to appreciate them. I grabbed my bag and started to head out when I tripped over something that I had missed. It was an unopened bottle of Rad Cola. I picked it up and put it in my bag. Maybe it's still good. I turned off my light and headed out of the tent. I tried to get my bearings and figure out where Onion was. I couldn't see the shack anymore. Felt like it'd gotten darker while I was in there. I gave my eyes some time to adjust, but that still didn't help. All I could see were tents. I activated my Pip-Boar and turned on my tracking program. Thankfully, I had a tracker on Onion, and within a few seconds it told me that he was located behind me. I had found some parts for him, and it was way too dark to continue looking around, so I might as well head back. I started walking when I heard a very loud crack in the air. It sounded an awful lot like the gun I had. My ears twisted in the direction of the sound, and I waited. Maybe I imagined it? After a moment of silence, I figured it was nothing, and started back when 2 more shots fired off in the same direction. Now I know I'm not imagining it. I turned in the direction of the noise. It was still too dark to make anything out, but after a few seconds, that changed. A small light flickered into existence a distance away. I really should head back. What if it's more of those creatures? Then again, they didn't seem smart enough to use a gun. And that was definitely a gun. Perhaps they're in trouble just like I was. I know I would have loved to have some help back there, so maybe I can offer some assistance. I headed towards the light, moving carefully as to not make much sound, just in case. I was finally close enough to the light to see that it was a fire. I could hear voices, but I was still too far away to make it out. As I got closer, I was able to make out some words. I kept hidden as I listened for a moment. Last thing I need was to spook them and get shot.
I tell you, Griff, those savage ghouls seem to be outnumbering us. Last week we ran into, 5, maybe the entire week? I've shot 5 in the past hour.
You know those fucking things are everywhere. I'm sure it was just the explosion we saw. Just woke him up.
Yeah, about that. What do you think it was? Better question. Why the hell are we heading towards it?
You know the bosses want to find more salvage. What better place than Zootopia? It's been off most radars due to the large amount of ghoul activity there, but maybe someone finally decided to clean out the place. If that's the case, we should try to take advantage of it.
If it's already cleared out, or worse, a rival gang, what then?
We just play it by ear, Jay. As long as it ain't those redneck freaks, we should be fine. Then again, I doubt if it's them, or else the whole place would just be a giant bonfire.
Gangs? Rednecks? Just who are these people? I was sure they needed some help, but now I'm wondering if that's not the case. I should just head back. Onion's probably worried about me. I slowly turned around and started to leave when a noise froze me in place. Fuck. Did they know I was there?
Hey! Who goes there?
Fuck, fuckity, fuck. I'm a goner. Maybe they'll just see me as a lost soul and take pity on me? Maybe these guys are actually decent folk who just so happen to be collecting scrap for a living. Yeah, it'll be fine. Right? I should have listened to Onion and stayed in that shack until morning. What should I do? I could run, or I could give myself up. They had to know I was there by now. So why haven't they found me?
Help! Please help me!
A new voice. A female? Maybe they didn't know I was here after all. I turned back and attempted to peek at what was going on. Until now, I was just listening. I folded my ears behind my head and took a look as carefully as possible. The two who were talking earlier were standing with their guns pointed in the opposite direction of me. One of them looked to be a deer, but most of his antlers had been broken off into stumps. He was dressed in a ragged trench coat. The other was a wolf, his black fur matted underneath some scrappy-looking clothing made of... Was that hide? No, I don't want to think about that. At least after 2 decades, predator and prey seem to still be working together.
My husband, we were attacked!
The new voice belonged to a feline, a cheetah perhaps? She was wrapped in what looked like 2 dresses of opposite colors sewn haphazardly together. I guess when the world ends, fashion dies with it. She was holding her arms across her chest as if she were trying to comfort herself.
Okay, calm down, miss. What attacked you?
It was ghouls.
Yeah, we've had a few of them around here. What are you doing out here so late at night?
My husband and I, we're traders. I wanted to rest the night, but he insisted on making it to Beaverton by daybreak.
Well, where'd you get attacked?
It's near Highway 21 Junction. We're trying to pull our wagon through the remains when we got attacked.
Perfect. Don't worry, ma'am. Your wagon will be safe with us.
But what about...
That was all she could say before the deer fired his weapon. He must have been a good shot because she dropped right where she stood. What kind of monsters were these? Shooting a helpless woman who just asked for assistance? I better get out of here before they see me. Not the kind of first impression I expected out here, and I don't want it to be my last. Thankfully, they didn't seem to notice me as I snuck away. After I was sure that I was far enough away from them, I turned my pipboard at Onion's signal and followed it, being careful not to leave any trace so that they can't follow me back. For once, I was thankful for the darkness. I returned to the shack with no further incidents. I took a small look around the outside to make sure that everything was sealed. I didn't want my pipboard light bleeding out and making us a sitting target. When I was content, I opened the door. I should have knocked because I was inches away from being stunned by Onion's shock baton.
Oh, miss, I'm so sorry. You were gone for so long I was beginning to worry. Then I heard someone slinking around the outside and I feared the worst.
Yeah, Onion, that was me. Just wanted to make sure this place was secure for the night.
So, besides me nearly electrocuting you, did you discover anything interesting?
I found some spare parts to fix you with, and I saw a woman get killed.
My audio processors must be on the fritz. I thought I just heard you say you watched someone get killed.
I filled in Onion on everything that had happened. The coins that I had found, the robot that I had salvaged for parts, and the events that played out involving the death of an innocent woman. I know if Onion had eyes, they would have been wide with disbelief when I ended my story. I tried to forget what I had seen, and took out the parts I had salvaged and began to work on him.
My word, miss. I do hate to say I told you so, but the Burrow sounds like a much safer place than here.
To tell you the truth, Onion, I'm actually feeling happy.
Say again, miss. You just said you watched someone die. How could you be happy with that?
Not that! If anything, that makes me mad and nervous at what else we might meet. It's this whole thing. Life in the Burrow was boring after my mother died. Sure, I enjoyed fixing things residents brought me, and I loved fiddling around with you and any other piece of tech I could get my paws on. But even that was getting stale. When I thought we were going to die when those, I think they were called ghouls, were after us,
I felt an unfamiliar rush of excitement.
If you plan on putting us in more of those situations, I'm just going to have to scrap myself and get it over with.
Don't be melodramatic, Onion. I don't plan on purposefully putting myself in those types of situations. I still want to find a nice place to settle down, to live life how I want to, not how others tell me to. If a little excitement is thrown in at us here and there, well, I think it'll keep us motivated. I think Onion was about to make a remark when I shut him off. I had a few detailed fixes and I didn't want him to fry anything. That, and I really didn't want to argue with a robot right now. My heart was still racing from what I had witnessed, and that was almost an hour ago. My brain was still trying to process what happened. A part of me wanted to go and get revenge at what had been done, but my logic overthrew that fast. They were obviously used to this, and knew how to use a gun. I, however, didn't have that luxury, and I'd probably die before I could even attempt anything. Another part of me wanted to go and see if I could help the husband. But between the unknown number of ghouls that might still be there and the fact that it was still too dark to see much, turned me away from that idea. Something tells me I need to try to find some protection, and fast. One of them mentioned a trading town nearby. Beaverton, was it? That should be our first destination. After I was done fixing Onion, I turned him back on. It would take a while for him to fully reboot, so I decided to make use of the quiet time. I took down the towel that I had hung up on the wall and placed it on the bed. Now that I see how dirty it was in the light, I don't think I'd have an easy time falling asleep on it without something between me and it. I sat down and brought my backpack to me. I fished out the canned items and looked them over. I was feeling a bit hungry. I did have some rations with me, but I was curious. I got up and went over to my tool belt that I had slung over the chair. It happened to have a multifunctional tool that had a can opener on it. I pried open the can, being careful not to spill anything. When it was open, I took a look inside. It looked like some kind of soup. It smelled fine, no mold. I stuck my finger in it and pulled out something foreign. It was a whitish color and very flaky. I got a strange whiff of something from it. I still couldn't tell if it was good or not, but only one way to find out.
Miss Springs, stop right there.
He was awake. What is it, Onion? Can't you see I'm trying to eat? I'm starving.
Yes, but that is not for you. It's meat. Fish, to be precise. And a species like yours is not meant to digest such foods. It could make you sick.
Fish? My entire burrow was mostly vegetarian. The few that could eat meat did so through some kind of imitation meat paste. I remember once when I was a kid, a couple rabbits and myself were daring each other to do stuff. One of them suggested to try eating the paste. I knew that we weren't supposed to, but apparently he decided to accept the challenge. He ate an entire can of it, a week's worth of rations to some of the smaller residents, and it didn't agree with him. He was in the medical facility for a week before he recovered. Yeah, better not. I doubt medical help is as easy to find around these parts. I threw the can onto the ground and put the other one away. I wasn't about to see what was in it, and who knows, if it isn't something I can eat, maybe I can give it to someone who can eat it. If I ever find anyone who isn't cold-hearted enough to shoot a defenseless woman. I really hope I don't have a dream about that. Nightmares are the last thing I need. I grabbed my backpack and dug through it some more. I pulled out the 2 pouches with the coins and took both of them out. They were really shiny. I wonder if someone had polished them. Everything else out here was covered in grime or dust, yet these coins stood out. I noticed that Onion had gotten closer, as if he was looking at them too. Did he develop a taste for shiny objects?
My word, miss. Where did you ever get those?
I found them in a small box when I was searching for parts. Do you have any idea what they are? They look too pristine to be simple bits of currency.
Actually, my database pinged as soon as I registered them. They are called the Treasure of Zootopia, commissioned by a famous singer and peace activist Gazelle. 12 coins were created representing the diversity of animals and personalities that made up the city of Zootopia. 4 known sets were created. One was given to the mayor, Gazelle kept one set, a ZPD officer named Judy Hopps was given a set, and the last set's whereabouts were unknown.
So they're part of a set? I will definitely be keeping these. Maybe I can reunite them with their friends. I stared at them a bit longer before putting them back in the pouches. I don't know why, but I have the urge to collect them all. Or at least one whole set. They had some kind of radiance about them. I put them back in my back pocket and remembered the strange plastic carrot I had found. I pulled it out and gave it a closer look. It had buttons, so it must be some sort of electronic. I got up and went over to the table where I had a little more room. After grabbing my screwdriver set, I went about taking it apart. The insides were very basic: 3 buttons, a microphone, a speaker, and a power source. The batteries were dead, but the unit itself seemed intact. Since I didn't have access to whatever primitive power source this thing used, I did the next best thing. Through some fancy rewiring, I was able to hook it up to my Pip-Boar. And according to it, there was a small memory unit built in, and there was a recording stored on it. I downloaded it to my Pip-Boar. I'm about to go to sleep, Onion. You better power down and recharge yourself. We'll leave in the morning, and I want us both to be well rested. I heard about this town called Beaverton. Apparently it's a trading hub. Might be worth checking on. Maybe we can find supplies or even work there for us.
I do hope we don't run into any more of those ghastly creatures. Or worse. I don't think my circuits can take much more.
I smiled at him and laid on the bed, being careful that I was on the towel and not the actual mattress. I turned off the light and turned on the recording.
I tried to make it in time, Carrots. I really did. I just knew it was a mistake for you to take on this case alone. They should have sent in an investigator from Little Redentia, but you just had to be so adamant on taking this damn case, didn't you? Things are turning to shit out here, Carrots. Ever since the explosion in Tundra Town, there's been rioting, looting, and everyone's turning on each other. No one knows who did it, and everyone is blaming each other. The precinct is drowning in emergency calls, and we don't have the mammal power to handle this. We need... Maybe it's a good thing you're in there, safe and secure. I don't want to lose you, but I'd rather know you're safe than for the worst to happen. You said the Burrow would only be sealed for 30 years, so maybe I'll see you again. When you make it out, you know where to find me. Oh, and Carrots, remember the test that you submitted? Well, the results... What? No. Not here. Not now. Remember that I will always love you, Judy. And don't forget...